Hello and welcome. I'm Jason L. Jones, and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. A court in Moscow handed popular blogger Yegor Zhukov a 3-year suspended sentence after finding him guilty of inciting extremism online in a case condemned as politically motivated. In a message that went viral on Russian social media, Zhukov called for a society filled with responsible and loving people. Thousands of people rallied to his cause. To discuss his case, we are joined in the studio today by Vladimir Zhbankov. He's a lawyer and an expert at the House of Free Russia in Kyiv. Hello, and thank you for joining us. So before we start, I'd like to give a little background to the audience who may not know about Yegor Zhukov's situations. For this case, Yegor Zhukov is 21. A libertarian activist, and has a blog channel with 155,000 followers. He was arrested in August amid a protest that gripped Moscow when he was talking about the repressive political system, right? Prior to this, he had had a big YouTube audience, and so where he posted a series of blogs that just kind of venting his frustrations about President Putin. And would you call, Zhukov a young symbol of Russian symbolism?
He's one of the symbols, and he became one of the symbols during last few months. And at his blog, Yegor Zhukov told his audience about methods of non-violent resistance and about the literature about this theme. For example, it is a very famous book of John Sharp, where we can find 198 methods of non-violence resistance. But repressive organs thought that talking about somehow methods of evolving, of somehow dealing with regime and trying to put situation in more democratic style or something like this. It is the calling to extremism, because you are call people to change political reality in Russia. And but nowadays political reality and regime is something that is sacred, and you must love your big brother, you must love regime, and it is a part of official concept of patriotism. And his crime is that he didn't love it. And the second part, in his case, there was big research, official research about his activity, and there was only one expert that have no linguistic background. He's mathematic, but prosecutors thought that it is only one expert that could tell something about these actions. But his lawyers have another experts, 3 or more, that had very big science background. But but the court didn't hear them and didn't want to hear them. And prosecutors asked for real detention, but because of massive protests, because of activity of civil society, and I don't know, because the stars put in such combinations, it was not real sentence, but it was the second part, and I think it is very important too. It is limitations of using internet, and he could not provide his activities as he did before, and he will find some ways to do it, but it is very complex question, because if prosecutor's office thought that he is providing his activity about extremism, his detention will be real, and he will go to penal colony.
Wow. And so this, in looking at this story, it really reminds me, or makes me think of kind of likening Russia in this sense to China. And that kind of censorship and whatnot. It's like, would you make that comparison? Do you think this is kind of like because you're not loving
It is light version, light version, because in Russia it's authoritarianism, not totalitarianism, and these companies didn't have a systematic character. But we can see big company against any political activity and any thoughts of political activity. Now it's called Moscow case, and for example, now in penal colony is Konstantin Kotov, who took part in one-person pickets, and he provides the idea of exchanging of prisoners between Ukraine and Russia, and he provided to call back people that are in jail in Russia, Ukrainians, and it was systematic actions for many, many days. He stayed in one-person pickets, but prosecutor office thought that it is breaking of rules of political meetings, but it was no political meetings, it was one-person picket. It is not meeting, but he had 4 years real detention. And now he is in penal colony, and it is one case, and we have more cases. Last Friday there were 2 more people that had judged, and this process we will see for months, I think in January, February, and so on. And it will be dozens of people that will go to the jail, and more people that will have not real that will not go to jail, but will have some limitations like Yegor Zhukov, and their life will be very hard.
And so considering the political situation and climate in Russia right now, do you think what Yegor got was a fair sentence?
Fair sentence? Maybe, but we can see that this feelings of people in their hearts about regimes and political regime and about political situations are changing. For example, in 2020, we will see another situation like we see in 2009 when it was Bolotnaya case. People don't like the situation. Maybe they are frightened to go to the streets, but we see this summer when were elections in Moscow parliament, regional parliament, not big federal parliament, but we saw many actions and thousands of people took part in that, and Moscow case is a reaction of regime, but it is very standard reaction. It always react like this, and if you do same things one time and another time, they begin not to work. I think.
And I'm curious, because, you know, looking at Zhukov, he's pretty, you know, he's young. He's like the image of, you know, the millennial. And I'm just
he's
curious.
Very pretty.
Yeah, you know, and I wonder, is that a kind of thing that helped him get people to rally behind him, because he has this image of, you know, not the typical protester in a sense, you know, as the YouTube following and whatnot. But also, I'm wondering if, like, has this, as an American who's kind of new to a lot of the things that are going on with Russia and the protests and things like that, have there ever been, like, is it typical for the youth, young, you know, especially if they were high schoolers, you know, 18 and below, to be, you know, penalized in this way, to be sent to jail or whatnot? And has there been, you know, other instances that have gained attention?
The first part, he's a student. He's very good talking student. He has a good background in political science. He is student of one of the best universities in Russia in this sphere. It is the first part. The second part, he's completely innocent. And the persecution and all process against him was demonstrative illegal. It was the system shows us that it could do anything with anybody. Did you something or you didn't did something. Called you to violence, so Yegor Zhukov demonstratively, it is a part of his ideology, non-violence protests, non-violence resistance. He is a pacifist and demonstrative pacifist, but state deals with him like with real extremist that call to some harm, to killing people, but Yegor Zhukov did it at all. And the reaction of society about these cases, the completely illegal action and emotions in the hearts of all people that see this case, and I think that the most part of civil society in Russia saw this case, and every step of this case was that it is something awesome, terrifying. And the protest will grow because of such actions of the state, because it's before they pretended to act in some legal frameworks, but last years we see that no framework is at all.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all your insights, Vladimir. It's been great. I wish we had more time to go into it, but hopefully we'll have you back another time, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was Vladimir Zhbankov. He's a lawyer and expert at the House of Free Russia in Kyiv. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the rest.